After divorcing my husband who was only physically present but emotionally distant, he regretted it. After marrying my husband Ji Shijin, I spent over 20 years in a marriage that was only in appearance. By a twist of fate, I was actually reborn. When I was reborn, I was in the midst of divorcing Ji Shijin, only because I found in his study a room full of portraits he had treasured of his cousin, Lu Qingning. This was the most intense argument we had ever had as a couple, in my previous life. I even proposed a divorce, but in the end, I chose to swallow this half-cooked meal. This endurance lasted for 20 years. This time, after he stormed off in anger, I immediately went to see a doctor and obtained an abortion pill, terminating the fetus that was not yet 3 months old. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins, staring at my reflection in the mirror, youthful and radiant. With skin as smooth as congealed cream, I felt somewhat dazed. I was astonished to find that I had been reborn into the past, and at this very moment, I happened to discover the woman my husband secretly loved in his heart. Rubbing my groggy head, I walked out of the inner chamber. At this moment, the main room was filled with a strong smell of alcohol. Ji Shijin was half lying on the soft couch, drinking one cup after another, looking quite content, perhaps because I was pregnant. The overwhelming smell of alcohol in the room made me feel nauseous. Hearing the sound, Ji Shijin lifted his head and glanced at me. He has a handsome face and sharp eyes, but there is not a trace of affection in his gaze when he looks at me. Even as I was vomiting uncontrollably, he never put down his wine glass or got up to show any concern for me. He just lazily reclined on the soft couch, with an air of indifference to everything, which chilled my heart. I took a deep breath and said, "Let's separate. Since your heart belongs to another, please give me a divorce letter. Let us part ways and each find our own happiness." He remained silent, only drinking. I continued, "Even if your relationship with her is based on genuine feelings and restrained by propriety, I still want to separate from you. I don't want to keep arguing with you over her. I feel that entrusting my life to you is not worth it at all." Hearing this, Ji Shijin looked at me in surprise and then set down his wine glass. He sneered, "Luo Jinglan, stop making a scene. Playing hard to get won't work on me." I couldn't be bothered to argue with him about this matter. Instead, I unconsciously touched my stomach and said, "As for the child, I won't be giving birth to him. Why should he be born into a home full of arguments? After we separate, you can continue to cherish the memory of Lu Qingning as much as you want. And no one will criticize you for it." Seeing the seriousness in my expression, Ji Shijin stood up and came to stand before me. He grabbed my hand, his face darkening as he said, "Enough, are you serious? Luo, my cousin and I have never crossed any boundaries. You'd better not make a scene. Your ugly, jealous face truly disgusts me. I don't have time to indulge your nonsense. You'd better know when to stop," I said calmly. "I'm not joking with you. I've made up my mind to separate from you." At first, he looked completely disbelieving, but then, as if struck by a sudden thought, he said angrily, "I see now where you got the idea to divorce me and even had the nerve to want to abort the child. Is it because you've hooked up with someone else and are in a hurry to leave me?" I was both furious at his casual slander and resentful that I could still be hurt by his lack of trust. I couldn't help but slap him across the face, tears streaming uncontrollably down my cheeks. "Ji Shijin, don't be so full of yourself. I'm not like you, always eyeing another dish while eating from your own bowl." In my previous life, whenever I couldn't bear it anymore and argued with him, he would dismissively say that I was overthinking, insisting that there was nothing between him and Lu Qingning, and that it was all in my imagination. But how could I not overthink given their behavior? They were merely using their cousin relationship as a cover for what was essentially a romantic affair. Whether it was the elders at home lamenting that Lu Qingning had entrusted her affections to the wrong person, teasing about their childhood friendship, or the subtle, meaningful glances they exchanged unintentionally, all of it would drive me into a rage. Thinking of these things, my heart grew colder and harder. I don't want this husband anymore, and I don't want the child either. To the child, I can only apologize to him in my heart, but since I'm going to separate from his father, why should I bring him into this world only to grow up in a home lacking parental love? Moreover, I no longer wish to waste any more time on Ji Shijin. In my previous life, it took me almost an entire lifetime to realize that Ji Shijin never truly loved me. The reason he came to propose and asked my parents for my hand in marriage was merely to save face. It was all because Lu Qingning chose to become the side consort of Prince Rong over him, and he felt deeply humiliated. To save face and to annoy Lu Qingning, he set his sights on me. After all, back in the day, I was the sought-after daughter of the Luo family, ready for marriage. Not only was my beauty well known in the capital, but I had also mastered the art of household management. Logically speaking, with such qualities, my life after marriage shouldn't have been too difficult. Before I was married, I used to imagine my future husband and what our life would be like. But now it seems all of that has been ruined by Jiyu Shijin. After we got married, because I wasn't the one he truly loved, he never cared about my feelings. In the beginning of my previous life, I didn't understand the reasons behind it all and could only vent my grievances by smashing things. Until one day, I accidentally discovered a room full of portraits in his study. The person depicted in all the paintings above is the same, his cousin, Lu Qingning, who married Prince Rong as a consort. Some of the portraits were so frequently touched that their edges had become frayed. It was clear how dearly the owner of these portraits cherished them. Only then did I realize that my husband held another woman close to his heart. How utterly ridiculous. After Lu Qingning was divorced by Prince Rong, he couldn't wait to bring her back to live with him. At first, right in front of me, he would complain about her being overly dramatic. Later, behind my back, he showed a completely different side. He was extremely attentive to Lu Qingning. Afraid of being the slightest bit rude to the beauty, he would carefully prepare gifts for her and accompany her on outings to enjoy the spring scenery. Even before I accidentally fell into the lake and was reborn, he was still out there accompanying Lu Qingning. Traveling and enjoying the scenery. Perhaps in Jiyu Shijin's heart, I was nothing more than an insignificant presence in his life. I am merely a woman who bore him children, a housekeeper who manages his household, while Lu Qingning is the one he wants to spend his life with. The true love he genuinely wishes to marry. Towards me, he is always extremely cold. When faced with my questioning, he impatiently tells me not to make a fuss, as if I were truly an unreasonable wife, just like now. When I expressed my determination to separate, he only frowned and warned me, "Luosha, don't push your luck. I haven't even divorced you, and I'm still providing you with good food and drink. What more could you possibly be unsatisfied with?" I couldn't help but think back to my previous life. Carrying this pregnancy had not been easy for me, and in the end, it completely ruined my health. After giving birth, things didn't get any easier. I would often wake up startled in the middle of the night, unable to even sleep properly, yet Jiyu Shijin turned a blind eye to all of this. In his view, childbirth was an innate ability of women, and my struggles were simply because I was being too delicate. So, not only does he not appreciate the hardship of childbirth, but he also thinks I'm a failure who can't even have children as well as others. He privately belittled me to his mother. "Mom, I never complain about how hard my work is. But she lives a life of ease at home and still has so many dissatisfactions. She really has it too good. If our roles were reversed one day, I wonder if she'd still have so many complaints to make." Coming back to my senses, I touched my chest, suppressing the sorrow rising in my heart. I nodded in agreement with his words. "You're absolutely right. I do have many dissatisfactions. You should divorce me as soon as possible, so Lu Qingning can be with you legitimately. She definitely won't be as discontent as I am." Jiyu Shijin, upon hearing this, thought I was jealous and was using the threat of divorce to force him to cut ties with Lu Qingning. He couldn't help but sneer. "In the end, you're just narrow-minded. Since you insist on a divorce, fine, no problem. But don't come crying and begging me later. Once you step out of my Jiyu family's door, it won't be so easy to come back." With that, he turned and left in a huff. In my previous life, after Lu Qingning was cast out, she came between Jiyu Shijin and me, and we had many arguments about divorce, but because of the persuasion from both sides' elders, and also because of the child, we never succeeded in getting a divorce. Now, Jiyu Shijin probably still thinks I love him too much and would never bear to abort the child, so he doesn't take my words seriously at all. However, after having lunch, I went to Xingren Hall and asked that famous gynecologist for an abortion drug. By the time I came out, the child was already gone. That's just as well. This way, the child won't have to grow up in a household with discord between parents, where every little disturbance would make them tremble with fear, worried about being abandoned. He also won't be frightened by what Jiyu Shijin says. Thinking I've abandoned him and suffering from heart palpitations, in my previous life, I was constantly worried that he might be mistreated or have a difficult life in the Jiyu residence. Which is why I repeatedly yielded to Jiyu Shijin. Until my youth faded away, I could only continue to stay in the Jiyu family, wasting my time. In my rebirth, I chose not to give birth to this child, because I didn't want him to suffer in silence again due to his parents' relationship, and to have so few happy moments in his life, and my own life should have another choice. I fear nothing about the unknown future. Perhaps not wanting to see me, Ji Shijin spent several nights in a row away from home. Therefore, on the day he returned to the residence, I intended to ask him to sign the divorce papers. Even though he went to Lu Qingning's residence as soon as he returned, I still went over. Arriving at the door, I faintly heard Lu Qingning's charming voice. "Cousin, I truly feel for you. How could your wife not understand the difficulties you face? She really shouldn't be like this." Ji Shijin replied, "Don't mention her. If she were even half as sensible as you, I wouldn't be so troubled." I pushed the door open directly, interrupting their discussion about me. Upon seeing it was me, Ji Shijin said with disgust, "Luo Jinglan, what do you want now? I was busy with official duties all last night and am exhausted. I don't have the energy to deal with your antics." I sneered at him. "Were you really busy with official duties? Or were you tired out on some other woman's bed? You're not a young man anymore, you need to be careful. After all, you still need to carry on the family line." He gritted his teeth and said, "Luo, is this the attitude you should have toward your husband? Are you being so insolent in front of me just because you're pregnant? Do you think I won't divorce you for the sake of the child? That's why you're playing hard to get, trying to control me." Ji Shijin has always been arrogant, always believing himself capable of anything and knowing everything. I shook my head. "I've already let go of you, and I'm serious about the divorce. You don't need to worry about me going back on my word." Ji Shijin pushed Lu Qingning aside and pointed at me angrily. "Luo Jinglan, that's enough. I've been very tolerant of you for the child's sake. If you keep this up, be careful or I might really leave you." Seeing that he still couldn't understand what I was saying, I said directly, "Congratulations, you no longer have to tolerate me for the child's sake, because I had an abortion a few days ago." No sooner had I finished speaking than his face turned ashen, and he said in disbelief, "Luo Jinglan, how dare you abort my child? You have some nerve." Seeing him lose control, I took a few cautious steps back in defense. I retorted, "Why wouldn't I dare? You, for the sake of a woman who once abandoned you out of greed and vanity, have cast aside your lawful wife without a second thought. Why should I endure the pains of childbirth to carry on your family line?" Ji Shijin frowned deeply and said helplessly, "It's all baseless nonsense. Why won't you believe me?" Lu Qingning also sobbed and said, "Cousin-in-law, how could you think of my cousin and me that way? No matter what, the child is innocent. You are too cruel-hearted." The two of them went back and forth, making it seem as if I were the one in the wrong. I said coldly, "Ji Shijin, don't the portraits in your study speak for themselves?" And as soon as Lu Qingning was sent back to her family after being divorced, you couldn't wait to bring her into the mansion, giving her the best residence and allocating her 100 taels of silver every month. She spends more lavishly than I, the mistress of the house. Do you know the servants are all laughing at us? All of this was arranged by you personally. Can any of it be false? Ji Shijin couldn't refute for a moment, so he could only cling to the topic of the child. "Then you can just abort my child. You're too cruel. If this gets out, who would think what you're doing is right? As for me and my cousin, I don't want to explain anymore. You wouldn't listen anyway. You really are like a madwoman, only capable of jealousy and making a fuss over nothing." He spoke with great seriousness, as if he truly believed this in his heart. "But after my past life, how could I not be aware of Lu Qingning's place in his heart? In his heart, Lu Qingning is the unattainable white moonlight of his youth, and now that she's intentionally showing him favor, he can only feel smug about it." Ji Shijin would indulge her advances, satisfying the longing within him. Thinking of my past life, my eyes grew slightly red, holding back tears. I said, "Before you stormed off last time, hadn't you already agreed to a peaceful separation? And I told you I wouldn't keep the child, so what is it that you can't accept now?" He remained silent for a moment before asking, "Have you been waiting for this day all along? Did you want to leave me from the very beginning?" I took a deep breath and replied, "Yes, I've come to my senses. Even if I went through all the hardship of giving birth, you wouldn't spare me a second glance. On the contrary, you'd probably just make sarcastic remarks. But don't forget, I was once known for my reputation in the capital. I wasn't limited to marrying only you. Yet after you married me, you made me live in constant anxiety, turning me into the madwoman you claim I am. Tell me, have you treated me fairly?" Ji Shijin's face darkened as he asked in confusion, "Are you bringing up the past now? Do you regret marrying me?" He seemed to genuinely believe he had done nothing wrong. I didn't want to continue arguing about who was right or wrong, so I simply handed him the divorce papers, but he turned his head away, refusing to even look at them. I lowered my head and cried, "Ji Shijin, what are you doing? Do you feel a sense of accomplishment watching me go crazy over you?" You clearly know I mind you getting too close to Lu Qingning, yet you still let her stay in the mansion and let her get in my way. Ever since I got pregnant, I've been feeling unwell, but you haven't shown me any extra care, since you can't forget Lu Qingning. After we divorce, won't you be able to marry her and bring her home? Jiyu Shijin saw me crying so bitterly and suddenly felt a twinge of conscience. He was just about to step forward to comfort me. Lu Qingning immediately said with a tearful voice, "Sister-in-law, I have always respected you deeply. How can you not tolerate me like this? If you insist on causing a scene and demanding a divorce so recklessly, people will think I forced you to leave. How will others view me in the future?" Jiyu Shijin immediately forgot what he was about to say and turned to comfort Lu Qingning instead. Watching this scene, to disgust him, I deliberately said, "You've always refused to agree to the divorce. Could it be that you're reluctant to let me go now?" Sure enough, he immediately retorted, "How could that be? I don't love you at all." After saying that, a flicker of regret seemed to flash in his eyes, though it might have just been my imagination, to prove that he didn't love me. This time when I handed him the divorce papers, he didn't avoid them. With a flourish of his pen, he signed his name. He watched me joyfully holding the divorce papers, his face darkening as he stared at me. Lu Qingning saw that we had truly divorced, and a pleased smile appeared on her face. She said softly, "Sister-in-law, oh, no, I should call you Miss Luo now. You're too hot-tempered. If you don't change that, who will be able to tolerate you in the future?" I replied. "That's because you're so skilled. I admit I can't compete with you. So, now that I've stepped aside, you should use your tricks when the time is right. Otherwise, when will you ever get your chance to rise?" She turned her head and said to Jiyu Shijin with grievance, "Cousin, did you hear what she said? It's not like I forced her to divorce. If she goes around saying things outside, how am I supposed to face anyone?" Jiyu Shijin immediately comforted her with a pained heart. The two of them spoke words of concern to each other as if no one else was around, as intimate as could be. In my previous life, I had grown tired of such scenes and had long become numb to them. I'm too lazy to argue with Jiyu Shijin anymore. I took the divorce letter and turned to leave. That same day, I packed up my dowry and left the Jiyu residence. After learning about my divorce from Jiyu Shijin, my parents refused to let me enter their home, insisting that I go back and beg Jiyu Shijin to call off the divorce. Otherwise, they would disown me as their daughter. In my previous life, they persuaded me in the same way, and without support, I muddled through a lifetime of frustration. Given a second chance at life, I no longer want to continue enduring this humiliation. My father, steady and solemn, said, "Couples may quarrel at the head of the bed but make up by the foot. Yet here you are, your husband didn't even lay a hand on you, but you, at the slightest disagreement, took the life of his heir. The Luo family has no daughter like you." My mother, wiping her tears, said, "I think you're just too hot-tempered. Why don't you go back now and apologize to your husband, so he won't take the divorce seriously?" I said with suppressed anger, "Father, mother, do you know, Jiyu Shijin has always had a place in his heart for his cousin. The moment Lu Qingning was divorced, he eagerly went after her and even brought her into his residence to take care of her. He has already humiliated me like this. Why should I continue to endure the humiliation and stay there?" My mother still tried to speak in Jiyu Shijin's defense, but hasn't the young master given her any official status? Perhaps he really is just trying to help his cousin. After you became pregnant, he prioritized you above all else in his household, always giving you the best of everything. You should be content. Between husband and wife, many things shouldn't be taken too seriously. Turning a blind eye sometimes makes life easier. My father said with a stern face, "Your mother and I are getting old, and we won't be able to look after you for much longer. In the future, your husband's family will be your true support. If your husband is still willing to take you back, it would be best for you to return. I can see that he still cares for you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come all the way to apologize to your mother and me over your separation. Moreover, in his words, he still considers himself half a son of our Luo family." Despite their disapproval, my resolve remained unchanged. "Father, mother, I've already had the child aborted. Don't you understand how determined I am? Since Lu Qingning came to the Jiyu family, Jiyu Shijin has been unconsciously comparing me to his cousin. He has no respect for me at all. He wants to have his cake and eat it too, but his behavior is just too ugly. I know that the matter of our separation will give others something to gossip about. I won't be staying in the capital for long, so before long, no one will keep talking about it." Seeing that my mind was made up, my parents could only sigh and tacitly accept my decision to separate. My father knew I didn't want to stay in the capital, so he suggested I go to Jiangnan and seek refuge with my aunt. My aunt's in-laws were a prominent family in the Jiangnan region, and with her looking after me, my parents felt at ease. Before setting off, I went to the street to prepare the necessary items for the journey. I went to a tailor shop, but as I approached the door, I spotted Ji Shijin's figure. He was selecting fabrics, accompanied by a few of his fair-weather friends. Brother Ji, the news of you and your wife separating has been spreading everywhere. What, you're not actually planning to marry Lu Qingning, are you? Hearing this, Ji Shijin paused his hand on the fabric and replied irritably, what nonsense are you talking about? Since when have my cousin and I been together? Hearing his denial, one of them laughed and said, that's true, Lu Qingning is just a discarded woman cast aside by Prince Rong. How could she possibly be worthy of you? Ji Shijin detected the disdain in their words and said unhappily, who are you calling a discarded woman? What right do you have to insult her like that? Besides, there's nothing between us, so how can there be any question of whether she's worthy or not? Everyone was surprised, and someone couldn't help but ask, then why did you still divorce your wife? To be honest, your wife is not only beautiful but also excellent at managing the household, Ji Shijin said with embarrassment and annoyance. It's all because she was making a fuss. I didn't want to argue with her at first, but at that moment, one word led to another. If I hadn't divorced her, wouldn't I have lost face? Someone cautiously inquired, will you take her back? After all, your home can't be without a mistress forever. Ji Shijin fell silent. His friend realized something and blurted out, you've actually thought about taking your wife back, haven't you? Ji Shijin retorted, what, is that not allowed? The man chuckled and said, I've heard that women from the Luo family never have trouble finding a marriage. You should act quickly, or if her family arranges another match for her, you'll be too late. Before Ji Shijin could respond, someone else chimed in my opinion, you shouldn't be too eager. Women shouldn't be spoiled, or you'll never earn respect as the head of the household. Look, she insisted on divorcing you, doesn't that show she doesn't take you seriously? Ji Shijin nodded in agreement, that makes sense, after all, she's a remarried woman, it won't be easy for her to marry again. Once she stays long enough at her parents' home and faces enough scorn, she won't be able to bear it and will beg to return to my side as Mrs. Ji. I'll wait for her to come to me. After hearing his words, I smiled mockingly and quietly left. A few days later, I set off for Jiangnan with a group of household servants. My aunt warmly received me. With her help, I purchased some properties in Jiangnan. Among them was a large 3-courtyard mansion, and I soon moved in. My aunt had wanted me to stay in her residence to keep her company, but considering that I might settle in Jiangnan for a long time, I thought it would be more convenient to find my own place. After settling down in Jiangnan, I gradually resumed contact with my close friends in the capital. Only then did I learn about the matters concerning Ji Shijin and Lu Qingning after I had left. My parents were likely worried about stirring up my sorrows, so they never mentioned Ji Shijin. So when I saw my close friend mention Ji Shijin in the letter, I was taken aback for a moment. After arriving in Jiangnan, my days have been so fulfilling that I haven't had time to dwell on the past. I looked down with a curious mind, wondering what interesting gossip my friend was about to share. The letter said that my departure had given Lu Qingning the idea to take my place, but for some reason, Ji Shijin always avoided the topic and became hot and cold toward her. In a moment of desperation, she showed up in Ji Shijin's room late at night, trying to seduce him and make things happen. As a result, Ji Shijin was so startled by her that he actually threw her out without any regard for their relationship. The commotion was quite loud, and by the next morning, the servants had already spread the news throughout the household. Lu Qingning felt too ashamed to show her face and locked herself in her room, refusing to eat. This time, Ji Shijin actually allowed her to lose face and even had the steward rent a house for her outside the estate, making her move out of the Ji residence. Lu Qingning refused to move out, insisting she would only believe it if Ji Shijin personally told her to leave. Instead of indulging her, Ji Shijin invited a matchmaker to introduce potential husbands to her. Only when Lu Qingning saw that Ji Shijin was determined not to give her a proper status did she reluctantly move out. She then thought of rekindling her old relationship with Prince Rong and secretly sent him a note, asking to meet. When Lu Qingning was waiting joyfully at the inn, what she received was the furious Rong princess consort. The Rong princess consort had someone slap Lu Qingning's face until it was swollen and red before leisurely saying, "You vicious woman with ill intentions. Failing to poison my son, the prince spared your life and only divorced and expelled you from the mansion. Instead of keeping a low profile, you actually dared to contact the prince again. Are you tired of living?" Lu Qingning repeatedly shook her head and begged for mercy, and only then did the rogue princess consort return to the mansion. Therefore, from that time on, everyone knew the reason why Lu Qingning was divorced. Jiyu Shijin was very disappointed by the other party's actions and declared that he would no longer contact her. I am not interested in the subsequent development between the two of them. What troubles me is that the letter said Jiyu Shijin requested an imperial decree to be assigned as an official in Jiangnan, and my friend asked me to pay attention to it. I wrote back to thank my friend. I vaguely felt that Jiyu Shijin's sudden assignment to the south of the Yangtze River had something to do with me. At the same time, I felt annoyed and didn't want to see old acquaintances. Anyway, even if he were to come to the south of the Yangtze River, it wouldn't be until after the new year, so I wouldn't have to deal with him so soon. I had no plans to return to the capital for the new year and only prepared gifts to be sent along with my aunt's portion to the capital. Time flew by quickly, and after touring the scenic beauty of Jiangnan, I turned my attention to the business I had acquired. My aunt, seeing how busy I was barely able to keep my feet on the ground, felt sorry for me and urged me to slow down and take a break. I nestled by her knees and let her dress me up as she pleased. After she finished, she nodded approvingly and said, "Not bad, you're still so young. Don't just focus on making money, you should think about your marriage prospects. You can't keep living like this all alone, can you?" I know she meant well, but I still shook my head. "Aunt, I'm in no mood to consider remarrying right now." She wanted to say more, but seeing my serious expression, she had no choice but to drop the matter. That day, after inspecting the shops that had turned a profit last month, I ran into Jiyu Shijin, whose face looked grim. The smile on my face immediately froze. He looked at the new clothes I was wearing and the new jewelry I had on, then couldn't help but sneer. "So happy and all dressed up, who are you meeting?" I frowned and said, "None of your business, step aside, I'm leaving." He gritted his teeth and said, "Do you really not want to see me that much, not even willing to give me a smile?" I had no idea what he was so worked up about and just wanted to turn around and leave. I didn't expect him to quickly walk to my side, grab my hand and say, "Jinglan, don't go, don't leave me anymore." I looked at him with confusion. And he gazed at me saying, "I regret it. I regret so easily agreeing to separate from you. I've already had Lu Qingning move out of the mansion. She won't be in your sight anymore. And about the child, although I'm deeply saddened that you aborted our baby, as long as you're willing to marry me again, we can have more children in the future. I still have many personal assets in my hands, and I'll hand them all over to you. Then you won't have to suspect that I'd use them to win Lu Qingning's favor." Jiyu Shijin rarely lowered his head to admit his mistakes, yet some things couldn't be changed just because he apologized. I tried with all my might to pull my hand back, but he held on tightly, leaving me helpless. I said irritably, "Jiyu Shijin, please think clearly, we're already divorced. What kind of behavior is this?" Jiyu Shijin said regretfully, "I know I did many foolish things in the past and hurt your heart. But can you give me another chance? Let us start over." I replied calmly, "No, there is no medicine for regret in this world. Your remorse is useless now, and I don't love you anymore. We can't go back to the way we were." Jiyu Shijin said painfully, "Are you still bothered by Lu Qingning?" "I suppose it's my pride acting up. That thorn of not being chosen in my youth has always been hidden in my heart, so I always wanted to win back around, but after losing you, I realized that doesn't seem so important anymore. No matter what difficulties he may have, I have no intention of becoming his missus." Jiyu again. Just as I was struggling with how to get rid of him, a clear and cheerful voice rang out, "Miss Luo, what a coincidence, you're out on the street too." I looked over and saw Shenyi and his son, Xiao Bao. Shenyi is the neighbor living next door to me. He's a widower. His wife, after giving birth to little Bao, remained bedridden with illness and passed away after struggling for nearly 3 years. Otherwise, their family would have been the envy of everyone. Little Bao waved excitedly at me, calling out cheerfully, "Pretty sister, little Bao is here." I couldn't help but smile at his adorable appearance. Jiyu Shijin sneered upon seeing this, "So you really did have an appointment with someone, but it seems they don't value you much, bringing along a burden to the meeting." I didn't like the disdain in his words and retorted, "Xiao Bao is a very adorable child, don't speak of him like that." Hearing me defend them, Jiyu Shijin grew even angrier. "Luo Jinglan, are you really that foolish? If you marry him, you'll only end up being a stepmother. Even so, you won't give me another chance. If you like children, we can have our own adorable child." I wanted to make him give up, so I deliberately said, "I'd rather be a stepmother to someone else's children than bear and raise your own." Jiyu Shijin took a few steps back in disbelief, and I seized the opportunity to pull my hand back. I turned and walked towards Shinyi. Jiyu Shijin stared blankly as I left, no longer trying to stop me. On the way home, only little Bao kept chattering away to himself. I maintained a silence with Shinyi all the way. When we arrived at my doorstep, I shamelessly explained, "Brother Shin, I'm really sorry. That man just now was my ex-husband, who I've already separated from. I don't know what madness came over him, but he actually came looking for me, so I deliberately provoked him to make him let go. Please don't take it to heart," Shinyi said considerately. "It's no problem. Being able to help you is my honor." I smiled, bid farewell to him and his son, and was about to enter the house. Shinyi suddenly called out to stop me. "Miss Luo, actually, I think you can rely on." I had a feeling about what he was going to say next, so I immediately interrupted him. "Brother Shin, look, what a beautiful kite." Xiao Bao was captivated by the colorful kites and, filled with a desire to play, pulled Shinyi's hand, wanting to go fly a kite. Shinyi looked at me helplessly, and I avoided his gaze. How could he not understand what I meant? Therefore, he had no choice but to nod in agreement and say, "The kite is indeed quite beautiful. Miss Luo, you should understand what I mean. If you ever change your mind in the future, you can always talk to me." I smiled, neither nodding nor shaking my head. Xiao Bao enthusiastically wanted to invite me to fly the kite with him. I looked at Shinyi, who held Xiao Bao's hand and said, "Your pretty sister is going home. How about we learn to make a kite ourselves? Once it's done, we can fly it for everyone to see." So, Xiao Bao quickly forgot about me and dragged his father to buy materials for making the kite. After parting ways with them, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. After all, I had no intention of getting married again. I thought it would be a bit awkward to keep running into the Shin family if we continued being neighbors. Besides, most of my properties are near the East Market, so I planned to move and live closer to the East Market. I told my aunt about my decision to move. She looked at me teasingly and said, "I heard about it the other day. You were flying kites with that father and son from the Shin family. Is your heart stirring with spring feelings?" I was extremely surprised. "Aunt, you've misunderstood. Actually, it was because the kites made by Shinyi and his son were too ugly, and little Bao was so upset that he kept crying. I happened to go out and see this scene, so I softened my heart to comfort little Bao, and even flew the kite with him for a while." Making him smile through his tears, I explained the whole story from beginning to end. After hearing it, my aunt said with some regret, "Actually, Shinyi really is a good choice for you to remarry. He has good character, comes from a good family, and you can get along with his son. Are you really not considering him?" I shook my head. "Aunt, your niece does not want to be a stepmother. It's difficult to be a stepmother, even if I genuinely care for the child. I can't possibly handle everything perfectly. There will always be someone finding fault. Moreover, if I have my own biological children in the future, it would be even harder to guarantee that I would treat my stepson as well as before." She still wanted to persuade me, "But you've always been kind-hearted. You're not that kind of selfish person." I chuckled lightly. "Am I not living well enough now?" She replied. "But you need to think about the long term," I said seriously. "I have my own house to live in now, and I have my own business to make a living. How is that not a long-term plan?" So, seeing that my mind was made up, she stopped trying to persuade me to consider remarrying. However, when Jiyu Shijin saw that I was fully focused on my shop's business and realized that Shinyi was just an excuse I had used to reject him, he began to appear in front of me again, as if by chance. But I will not change my mind. Why should I satisfy his wishes and reconcile with him just because he regrets it? I focused wholeheartedly on expanding my business empire, and one day, my enterprises had spread across the entire country. As a result, I traveled and lived in various places, touring every corner of the land. Jiyu Shijin, bound by his official duties, couldn't follow me around and could no longer disturb my life. And so, hearing that I was surrounded by handsome men, he could only console himself with the thought that as long as I hadn't remarried, those men were merely passing guests I paid for pleasure. It wasn't until Jiyu Shijin turned 40 that news of his critical illness reached me. The physician said that years of pent-up sorrow had worn down his health at such an early age. He sent word to me, saying he needed to see me one last time before he could rest in peace. Even my own family couldn't help but speak in his favor, urging me to fulfill his final wish, considering that Jiyu Shijin would never remarry for the rest of his life. But until the moment he closed his eyes, he never got to hear me relent. I had said I would no longer have any contact with him, and no matter what, I would not change my mind. When my life came to its natural end, I lay in bed quietly thinking that this life of mine had been far more carefree and liberated than the last. I have not wasted this second chance. and for that, I am content. And so the first story ends. What do you all think? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, please give this video a like. Now, here's the second story. On the day of my delivery, my husband Xie Yang, known as a miraculous healer, abandoned me to enter the palace and accompany the imperial consort, who was also in labor. The imperial consort has never suffered hardship since childhood and needs my company. You are healthy and will surely have a smooth delivery. I neither cried nor protested, letting him go. In my previous life, I used the excuse of an abnormal fetal position to make him stay and treat me. However, the imperial consort he cherished most in his heart unexpectedly had a difficult labor, gave birth to a stillborn child, and injured her body, making it difficult for her to conceive again. The imperial consort was overwhelmed with tears, heartbroken and inconsolable, to make her smile. Xie Yang actually fed my child to wild dogs and then forced me to kneel before the imperial consort, kowtowing to confess my crime. He loathes me to the core. If you hadn't schemed to stop me, how could I have failed to save her child? How could she have injured her body? Vicious woman. I want you and your child to be buried with her child. My incessant pleas only earned me his merciless dismemberment by 1,000 cuts. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment my child was born. This time, I no longer wished to keep him. A sharp, twisting pain gripped my lower abdomen, as if someone had taken a knife and was churning it inside me. Cold sweat beaded on my forehead, and I quickly sent for the midwife. Yet my husband, Xie Yang, stood by watching coldly, showing no intention of helping. The maid Shuqin was extremely anxious. Young master, the physician has already examined her earlier. The young mistress has an abnormal fetal position and there are concerns about a difficult delivery. Please, young master, stay by her side. Shuqin's unfinished words were interrupted by Xie Yang. He looked down at me from above, the disgust and irritation in his eyes completely unconcealed. You'll truly resort to any means just to keep me here. What kind of physician's diagnosis is this? I think it's all a premeditated act you vicious woman planned in advance, putting on a show for me. I'm telling you, Zhenjin cannot be left alone right now. Don't even think about stopping me. With that, he was about to leave. Shuqin naturally wouldn't let him leave just like that. She has been by my side since childhood, growing up with me, and our bond is very deep. At this moment, for the safety of me and the child in my womb, Shuqin knelt before Xie Yang, spreading her arms to block his way and prevent him from leaving. Master, you cannot leave. Every word I speak is true. If you are not here, what will happen if something goes wrong with the young lady? Xie Yang was extremely agitated. Then let her die. Shuqin, let him go. I endured the pain, forcing these words out through gritted teeth. I truly didn't want Xie Yang to stay here any longer. In my previous life, Shuqin and I had used the excuse of improper fetal position to make him stay, all to protect our child. During the delivery, Xie Yang, the renowned physician, lived up to expectations and saved both me and our child. But when news arrived from the palace that Bai Zhenjin had a difficult labor and lost her baby, Xie Yang didn't even glance at me or our newborn before rushing to the palace. It was said that her body had been damaged, making future pregnancies unlikely, and she wept day after day. I thought Xie Yang was merely attending to her as a physician, but I never imagined he would drug me and bring me to Bai Zhenjin's palace. Only then did I realize that Xie Yang had always been in love with Bai Zhenjin. My heart turned cold, and I thought about divorcing Xie Yang, but those two were unwilling to let me go, nor were they willing to spare my child. Bai Zhenjin wept and lamented, "Your child is so lovely. It reminds me of my own unfortunate child." Xie Yang's eyes turned crimson with rage, blaming me entirely for his failure to enter the palace and protect Bai Zhenjin. To vent his beloved's anger, Xie Yang snatched the child from my arms and threw him to the wild dogs. My eyes nearly burst with fury as I struggled desperately to save him, but I was pinned down by the strong palace guards, only managing to grab a corner of the swaddling clothes. I watched helplessly as he perished in the jaws of the dogs, leaving behind only a tiny skeleton. Clutching that torn piece of cloth, I was overwhelmed with unbearable agony. Xie Yang, still unsatisfied, broke both my legs and forced me to kneel before Bai Zhenjin, demanding that I kowtow and apologize to her. If it weren't for your scheming to stop me, how could I have failed to save her child? How could she have suffered such harm to her body? You venomous woman. I will make you and your child pay with your worthless lives for the death of her child. He pulled out a gleaming dagger and began slicing the flesh from my body, piece by piece. My blood flowed all over the ground as I pleaded incessantly, yet my husband remained silent, cutting me again and again. slowly dismembering me alive. The last image before my death was him wiping the blood from his face, then kneeling beside by Junjun like a loyal dog. Junjun, the one who hurt you has been taken care of. Don't worry, I will definitely protect you. This is the memory from my previous life. I thought I would die with resentment and become a vengeful spirit. But I never expected that when I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the moment just before giving birth. Seeing Xie Yang standing in front of me, a surge of hatred instantly rose in my heart. I have been infatuated with him for many years, and only now has he turned to look back at me. If he doesn't love me, he could have simply not been with me. Why treat me like this? If he wants to be a dog by Junjun's side, he's free to do so, but why drag me into it? What was once a heart full of love has now turned into boundless hatred. If I could, I truly wish to kill him, to avenge the child from my previous life, but now I am in so much pain and have no strength left, so naturally, I cannot do it. In that case, it would be better to let him go and seek a different outcome than in my past life. I just never expected that after I gave the order, Shu Qin, that stubborn girl, still refused to step aside. Please. For the sake of the child in the young mistress's womb, stay and protect both mother and child. She kowtowed deeply. Unfortunately, Shu Qin only knew to protect her mistress, but she had touched upon Xie Yang's sore spot. In his previous life, he had stayed because of me and the child, only to regret deeply that he failed to protect Bai Junjun. Hearing similar words in this life made him even more furious. His cold, sharp gaze fell upon me, as if looking at a dead man. You've raised quite a loyal dog. To be humiliated like this, I wasn't without anger, but since ancient times, medicine and poison have been inseparable. As a divine physician, Xie Yang possessed no shortage of strange and unusual poisons. I didn't want to put Shu Qin in danger. Shu Qin, are you even refusing to listen to me now? Step aside quickly and let him go. Shu Qin's eyes reddened as she said firmly, Miss, nothing is more important than your safety. Seeing this, Xie Yang cursed her as a wicked servant. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly intervened. Xie Yang, don't. Xie Yang did not listen to me. He pulled out a handful of powder from his sleeve and scattered it. The next moment, Shu Qin collapsed limply to the ground. Xie Yang, what have you done to Shu Qin? Ignoring the pain in my abdomen, I stumbled and rushed to Shu Qin's side, demanding an answer from Xie Yang. Xie Yang didn't even glance at me. If you can't control your servant, then her worthless life need not be spared. He threw down these words and hurriedly left the residence, leaving me alone, holding the gradually cooling Shu Qin in my arms, tears uncontrollably streaming down. I never expected Xie Yang to be so ruthless. Shu Qin was only thinking of me. What wrong did she do? Why did you have to take her life? The heartache like being cut by a knife and the spasms in my lower abdomen made my vision start to go black in waves. I couldn't control my body as it went limp. And then I lost consciousness. In a daze, it felt like I had a very long dream. I dreamed of my first meeting with Xie Yang. Back then, I was still the proudest legitimate daughter of the Duke's residence, noble beyond measure. I was on a boat with several noble ladies, enjoying the scenery and composing poetry on the lake, when the small boat hit something and cracked open. Water immediately rushed in, and we panicked. Many of the ladies, with the help of their maids, swam directly to shore. But I didn't know how to swim. As it happened, Shu Qin wasn't with me that day, and the other maid I had brought actually abandoned me in the water and ran off. I thought I was about to die in the lake, but Xie Yang saved me. He descended like a peerless hero, dressed in a blue robe. Miss, hold on tight to me. He spoke softly, his peach blossom eyes seemingly glowing. He carried me ashore, and I was still dazed, my heart pounding like a drum, unable to calm down for a long time. Because I had fallen into the water and was pressed tightly against him, and for the sake of reputation, Xie Yang had no choice but to marry me. On the day of our wedding, he promised my father in front of him that he would treat me well for the rest of his life. But after we were married, he became much colder. I knew he only felt a sense of duty toward me, with little affection, yet I couldn't help but chase after him. After all, I was his wife, his rightful and legitimate wife. Perhaps it was the countless times I pricked my fingers sewing clothes for him, or the bowls of ginseng soup I, a lady of noble birth, brewed in the kitchen. Xie Yang was likely moved by my efforts. He was no longer as cold as he had been when we first married. He would laugh and joke with me, and thoughtfully remember my preferences. He would go all the way from the east side of the city to the west, just to buy my favorite rice cakes. When he returned from outings, he would always bring back a few branches of my beloved peach blossoms. Everyone around me said I had found a husband who truly cherished me. Back then, I smiled and nodded, thinking that Xie Yang and I would be like any ordinary couple, supporting each other through thick and thin, spending our lives together. Little did I expect that in my dream, I would see other things I hadn't known before. It turned out that he and Bai Zhenjin were childhood sweethearts, innocent playmates. Bai Zhenjin abandoned him to enter the palace, yet he never stopped thinking of her. In the end, when the emperor grew suspicious, they discussed countermeasures and set their sights on me. So the heroic rescue I thought was genuine was merely their scheme, a plot to clear the suspicion of their illicit affair for him and Bai Zhenjin, and all those feelings I believed existed between Xie Yang and me were nothing but an illusion crafted to reassure the emperor. Under Bai Zhenjin's constant reminders, he memorized everything I liked. After getting close to me, he would drink alone under the moonlight with a sorrowful expression. Even those pastries were merely an afterthought, he only bought them for me because he was already getting some for Bai Zhenjin. The truth felt like one slap after another, stinging my face with a burning pain. I can no longer deceive myself. The man in blue robes was fake. The peerless hero was also fake. Xie Yang's kindness towards me was all fake. He never loved me. He is a complete and utter scoundrel, hiding behind him and enjoying his favors. Bai Zhenjin is no good either. It's laughable that I actually sacrificed my entire life for two such people, sacrificed my own child, and even Shu Qin, whom I regarded as a sister. Utterly absurd. How pitiful and wretched. I cried and then laughed and then cried, when I suddenly opened my eyes. I only met the concerned gazes of the maids and elderly servants. "Young lady, you're finally awake." My personal maid, Shumo, with red-rimmed eyes, quickly brought me a cup of warm water. I moistened my throat and it took me quite a while to recover. "How long was I unconscious?" "Young lady, it has been 3 days. Where is Shu Qin?" When I asked about Shu Qin, Shumo bit her lip, tears welling up in her eyes. "Shu Qin has already been buried." I let out a soft sigh, barely suppressing the pain in my heart, then lowered my head to look at my abdomen. The ground was completely flat, with no trace of the child in sight. A sense of foreboding gripped my heart. My child. At my inquiry, the maids and elderly servants knelt in a row. Shumo's tears also began to fall uncontrollably. "Miss," when I rushed over with the midwife, "you were covered in blood." The young master, he had no breath the moment he was born. I collapsed weakly. I never thought that even after being reborn, he would still leave me. The heart-wrenching pain almost brought me to tears, yet somehow I couldn't cry. I knew very well that it might be better if this child were never born. With such a foolish father and this dynasty's emphasis on filial piety above all, would his life be anything but difficult? Hearing that I had awakened, mother hurried over as well. After marrying Xie Yang, although I moved out of the duke's residence, my parents doted on me so much that they bought a courtyard not far from the duke's residence for Xie Yang and me to live in. This way, it would be convenient for them to look after us if anything happened. I used to think that my parents were too distrustful of Xie Yang and overly cautious, but now I understand their thoughtful intentions. The older generation truly sees things clearly. Xie Yang's heart isn't with me, and I'm afraid my parents noticed it long ago. Mother arrived just as I was drinking my medicine. When she saw me, she immediately started tearing up, just like Shumo had. "My dear Yua, you've been wronged." Mother held my hand, her eyes filled with pity for me. As I looked at the silver strands at her temples, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sorrow. "Mother, it's all right. I've made up my mind. I want a divorce from Xie Yang." Mother nodded repeatedly, and at the mention of Xie Yang, her anger flared up again. "You should divorce him. That scoundrel. Do you know?" Mother's words trailed off abruptly as she carefully studied my expression. If she detected even a hint of sorrow in me, she would certainly not continue. But what Mother didn't expect was that I merely curled my lips into a faint, mocking smile. "Xie Yang has been keeping the Imperial Consort Company in the palace these past few days, hasn't he? You already know, that Xie Yang, he truly goes too far." Seeing that my reaction wasn't too strong, Mother felt relieved. Though she was still furious. "What does he take the daughters of our duke's residence for? He even went to the palace to curry favor. But that consort didn't fare well either. Yua, you probably don't know yet, do you? The consort gave birth to a child with congenital defects. The emperor took one look and ordered it to be drowned." I raised an eyebrow. "This is different from the previous life. So in the previous life, Bai Zhenjin might not have died from a difficult childbirth, but rather staged this act out of fear of being punished for giving birth to a deformed child. However, in this life, Xie Yang took the initiative to enter the palace, and she couldn't find a way to deceive everyone. After all, a consort who gives birth to a deformed child is destined to fall out of favor. I suppose Bai Zhenjin must be feeling quite miserable right now. Who can say this isn't the retribution for all their elaborate schemes? For once, I feel remarkably light-hearted. But merely falling out of favor is far too lenient a punishment, of course. I narrowed my eyes. Mother, I want to divorce Xie Yang. After all, we are connected by blood, and my mother instantly understood what I intended to do. She gently stroked my head, her eyes filled with heartache. All right. Whatever our Yue wants to do, your father and I will help you. Hearing these doting words, my nose tingled with emotion, and I nearly shed tears. I didn't even dare to imagine how heartbroken my parents must have been in my previous life when they learned of my death. But now is not the time for sorrow. I will surely reclaim the lives of the child in my womb and Shu Qin. From my mother, I learned much more about Bai Zhenjin. Bai Zhenjin has been in the palace for 4 years, rising from a lowly noble lady to the esteemed imperial consort she is now. She could not possibly be as innocent and naive as Xie Yang believes her to be, or perhaps she was just stringing Xie Yang along because she found him useful. A divine physician who adored her to the extreme could certainly be of great use. Recalling that no children had been born in the palace in recent years, I pondered for a moment. Mother, after I finish my confinement, I wish to enter the palace to pay my respects to the Empress. Speaking of which, the Empress in the palace is somewhat related to our Jiyu family by kinship. Both she and my mother come from the Yongyi Marquis house of the Shui family, and she even addresses my mother as aunt. When we were children, we got along quite well. However, after she entered the palace, to avoid arousing the Emperor's suspicion, she has not been in frequent contact with her maternal family. Mother knew I must have a compelling reason to enter the palace, so without asking what I intended to do, she agreed at once. After giving me a few more instructions, she returned to the estate. I had just promised her I would rest properly, but the moment she left, I hurriedly got out of bed. My lower body still ached somewhat, and my legs felt weak and feeble. I know, even though the child couldn't be saved, I'm still no different from a woman who has just given birth, and I should properly rest during the postpartum period. But my hatred for Xie Yang makes it impossible for me to lie peacefully in bed. I stared at the plum tree outside the window, my nails almost digging into my flesh. Cut down the plum tree. Shumo widened her eyes. Miss, she knows best how much I used to treasure these plum trees that I planted together with Xie Yang, but I no longer want to see them. I used to wonder why, when I liked peach blossoms, Xie Yang insisted on planting plums in the courtyard. Only now did I realize that the one who loved plum blossoms was Bai Zhenjin, the one held dear in Xie Yang's heart. Looking at these meticulously cared-for plum trees again, all I felt was disgust. I went to the medicine room that Xie Yang never allowed me to enter freely, and also asked my mother to help me find several well-known physicians, using the excuse of recuperating my health. No one found it strange. I rested for a full month. As expected, Xie Yang did not return to the residence even once during this month. It goes without saying, with the one in the palace still in confinement. How could he bear to come back? But in his anxiety, he likely forgot. The longer he stayed away, the more suspicious someone would become. The day Xie Yang finally returned home, I was in the courtyard burning paper offerings for my child. He caught me right in the act, yet his eyes were filled with nothing but disgust. What are you doing with these things in the mansion? It's bad luck. I ignored him and continued adding paper to the brazier, praying that my child would have a smooth and worry-free next life, and never again be reborn into a household with quarreling parents. Seeing that I was ignoring him, Xie Yang, for some reason, flew into a rage and stepped forward to kick over the brazier. Sparks instantly splattered onto my clothes, igniting small flames. Shumo frantically patted them with her hands, managing to extinguish the fire, but her hands were burned, and blisters began to form. I felt a pang of heartache. And when I looked at Xie Yang again, his eyes were deep and unfathomable. I knew he was venting his emotions on me. Every time he returned from the palace, he would become somewhat irritable and short-tempered. I used to think it was because he disliked having to cater to the whims of the nobility, but now I understand clearly. He just felt upset seeing the one he loves trying to please others. Xie Yang's once handsome face now appeared increasingly despicable in my eyes. Do you not know why I burn paper offerings? Xie Yang, do you remember that I was still carrying your child on the day you left? Xie Yang froze. A rare look of bewilderment appeared on his face. Where is the child? I sneered. Why do you think I'm burning paper offerings? Isn't that for Shu Qin? I didn't expect Xie Yang to dare mention Shu Qin, and my gaze grew even colder. Seeing that I wasn't as amiable as before, Xie Yang belatedly sensed my mood. He took a step forward. His brow slightly furrowed. Jiu, I know you're upset with me, But don't overthink it, I have a past connection with the one in the palace, I can't just stand by when she's in trouble. As for you and the child, Xie Yang's gaze swept over me a couple of times, carefully observing my expression. You have always been in good health, and I was by your side taking care of you during your pregnancy. Even if it was a difficult birth, the child shouldn't have been lost. Gu. Don't try to fool me, hurry up and bring our son out for me to see. I was so infuriated by his shamelessness that I laughed. Of course, if it weren't for the fact that he provoked me, he would indeed have the confidence to say that. My body was indeed not weak, and before the birth, he was quite attentive, truly like a good father, preparing everything. My health was personally regulated by him, and we had already decided on the child's name together. If it was a boy, he would be named Xie Chengyun. If it was a girl, she would be named Xie Yingyu. He had promised to ensure I gave birth safely, yet he abandoned me during labor. Giving birth is a life-and-death struggle for a woman who can guarantee nothing will go wrong. He abandoned me and even caused the death of my personal maid, yet he shows not a trace of remorse, and now, he has the nerve to ask me for our son. I let out a cold snort and told Shumo, who was also seething with anger beside me, to bring the child's memorial tablet. Xie Yang, open your eyes wide and look clearly, our Yuna is truly gone. Xie Yang stared fixedly at the name carved on the small memorial tablet, his face filled with disbelief. How is this possible? He was perfectly healthy. I knew he was referring to the previous life, but he was not worthy of saying those words, because in the previous life, Yuna also died by his hand. I clenched my fists, suppressing the surging hatred in my heart, and took out the prepared divorce agreement. Xie Yang, I'm tired, let's part ways. I handed that thin piece of paper to Xie Yang, but he suddenly burst out laughing. He didn't take it. Instead, he threw the memorial tablet he was holding onto the ground, shattering it to pieces. I quickly stepped forward, flustered and panicked, wanting to pick it up, but Xie Yang slapped me hard across the face. Gu, I never expected you to go this far just to pick a fight with me. You noble ladies are all so cunning. You even used a child's life to deceive me, and now you're trying to play hard to get with me. I know you resent me because of Junjun, but let me tell you, I will never fall for your tricks. He was convinced that I loved him deeply and would never bring up divorce. From Xie Yang's words, I understood exactly what he meant. He thought I would, as before, lower myself and humble myself when I saw him angry, enduring grievances to seek peace. But I just stood up and brushed the dust off my clothes, then I returned that slap with even greater force. Snap, went the sound, clear and melodious. Xie Yang covered his face, his eyes wide with shock. You. Before he could finish speaking, I interrupted him with another slap. Xie Yang, the thought that I once had feelings for someone like you makes me sick. My hands were intermittently numb, and my body trembled uncontrollably. Xie Yang's pupils trembled slightly, his jade-like fair face showing a trace of confusion and panic. Perhaps only at this moment did he realize that I wasn't joking with him, but I no longer wanted to waste any more words on him. I carried the broken memorial tablet to have it remade. This time, I pointed at the name Xie Chengyun on the memorial tablet and said to the craftsman, please change the surname to Gu. Xie Yang is not worthy of being Yuna's father. His surname is not worthy of being placed before Yuna's name. The first time I made a memorial tablet, I already had this idea in the back of my mind, but I hesitated for a moment, afraid that it might cause some trouble. Now, I only regret not having Yuna take my surname sooner. Xie Yang silently followed behind me, and he fully complied with my instructions. Yuna, is Yuna really gone? He frowned, as if he were such a doting father, his eyes reddening. Sorry, I didn't expect it to be like this. It was my oversight. Yua, please don't be angry with me anymore. Yuna is my child. How could you let him take the Gu surname? I waved my arm at him. Xie Yang instinctively covered his face. But this time, instead of slapping him, I let out a scornful laugh. Let me be angry with you. Who do you think you are? Yuna is my own child. Xie Yang, you are not worthy. It doesn't matter if you don't sign the divorce agreement. I will have my father petition the emperor to seek justice for me. Get out of my way. Stop being an eyesore in front of me. Xie Yang was somewhat stunned, as if he were seeing me for the first time, because I fell in love with him at first sight. I had always been gentle and considerate, which made him forget that I was once the most arrogant noble lady in the capital. When I loved him, I was willing to change for him. When I no longer loved him, I naturally reverted to my sharpest self. Whether he was worried that I truly despised him now, or afraid that I might have my father bring up something unfavorable in front of the emperor, Xie Yang panicked. He took my hand and bowed his head to me for the first time. Yua, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Can you forgive me this once? We can still have other children. I shook off his hand. Then took a handkerchief and meticulously wiped every spot he had touched. It's too late, Xie Yang. I'm moving back to the Duke's mansion tomorrow. As for this house, I let out a light laugh, my eyes filled with sarcasm. This house was also bought by the Duke's mansion. I'm sure our esteemed Dr. Xie wouldn't stoop to squatting in a property belonging to my maiden family. Make plans early. After saying that, I turned and went back to my room, shutting him out. Early the next morning, no matter how Xie Yang tried to please me or beg me to stay, I still took my maids and servants and had them carry my dowry back home. My dowry was dozens of loads, and the journey home was grand and imposing. In just half a day, everyone in the capital knew that the daughter of the Duke's household was returning home after seeking a divorce. When I married Xie Yang, it had already stirred up much controversy. Now, there were even more gossip mongers speculating about what had happened between Xie Yang and me. I didn't spread any rumors. Instead, I followed my mother into the palace to see the Empress. The Empress was somewhat surprised. Why do you suddenly wish to see me? I knelt on the ground and presented several packages of medicine that I had found in Xie Yang's study. Your Majesty, I discovered several doses of medicine in Xie Yang's possession that cause infertility in women. The Empress was even more puzzled. What does it matter if Xie Yang has medicine? I could only remind her, to answer your highness, Xie Yang has always been on good terms with the noble consort. There was no need to speak too deeply. My visit to the palace today was merely to plant a seed. Her Majesty the Empress was no fool. After I mentioned the relationship between the noble consort and Xie Yang, she quickly grasped the underlying implications. It has been over 4 years since the consort entered the palace, yet in all this time, why has none of the imperial concubines become pregnant? One must remember that before this, the imperial harem had welcomed several princes. However, upon careful reflection, the Empress realized that ever since Bai Zhenjin entered the palace, even the princes had encountered continuous misfortunes. Given the gravity of the matter concerning the imperial lineage, she dared not take it lightly and immediately dispatched people to investigate. After chatting with her for a few words, my mother and I took our leave directly. The eye drops had already been administered, and now, all that was left was to wait for the situation to unfold. When we returned to the estate in the Duke's carriage, my mother and I were stopped outside. I lifted the curtain and took a look. The one blocking the way was Xie Yang, yet, after just 1 day apart, he looked noticeably more haggard, but I wasn't surprised. In the old mansion, surrounded by maids and servants, there were even dedicated attendants to help me rinse my mouth in the morning. The kitchen was staffed with chefs my father and mother had specially hired for me. Xie Yang had long been accustomed to such a pampered life. Now that I've returned to the Duke's manor, such a large estate is left with only him inside. It's only natural that he's not used to it. Xie Yang's eyes were bloodshot. Yet he still stared straight at me, as if looking deeply affectionate. Yua, his voice was low, carrying an unmistakable tone of guilt. I and Zhen, there's nothing improper between us. I helped her for other reasons. Can you trust me one more time? Afraid that I wouldn't believe him, he quickly explained his connection with Bai Zhenjin. When she was a child, she once saved my grandmother's life. At that time, we became sworn siblings, before my grandmother passed away. She also urged me to take good care of her. Yua, believe me, you are the only one in my heart. I've already had new plum trees planted in the courtyard. We can definitely go back to how we used to be, right? His eyes reddened as he trembled, speaking these words. This heartfelt confession moved even the passers-by around them, who couldn't help but sigh with emotion. The son-in-law of the Duke's daughter is truly devoted and loyal. Yes, from what he said, it probably wasn't any serious mistake. Why is Miss Gu so insistent on divorce? If you ask me, women should have a gentler temperament. I listened to the whispers around me and sneered coldly. I didn't believe a single word Xie Yang said. I'm really curious how a young child managed to save your exceptionally skilled grandmother. And Xie Yang, don't treat everyone like fools. Completely innocent. Aren't there many scrolls of her hidden in your study? As for those plum trees, how laughable. Everyone in the capital knows I love peach blossoms, so why on earth would you plant plums in the courtyard? Xie Yang, do not pester me any longer. Gu will never look back. My tone was resolute, silencing all those gossiping tongues. Indeed, if hiding a woman's portrait in one's study can be called pure and blameless, then a crow can hardly be considered black. How could the renowned physician Xie be such a petty man? Who is the woman he admires? The gazes of those people grew increasingly strange. I avoided Xie Yang, dismounted, and entered the duke's residence. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Xie Yang, who looked as if he had suffered a great blow, his face as pale as paper. A flicker of mockery passed through my eyes. His visit to me today was likely at Bai Zhenjin's behest. She would certainly have been able to find out about my entry into the palace. She's probably afraid I'd use past grievances to lodge a complaint. However, neither of them could have imagined that my first move would be aimed directly at taking both of their lives. I've already crawled out of hell once, and I'm going to drag them all down there. When the Emperor summoned me, I wasn't surprised. Although my sister isn't particularly favored, she still holds some weight in the Emperor's heart. Moreover, she comes from a noble family and has seen plenty of underhanded schemes. After all, Bai Zhenjin lacked depth, and in the things she did, there were always careless oversights that she failed to tidy up properly. When I entered the audience with the Emperor, two people were already kneeling in the hall. They were Xie Yang and Bai Zhenjin. As soon as I entered, Bai Zhenjin began to weep, her tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain, a sight so pitiable it could move anyone who saw her. Your Majesty, I truly am innocent. Sister-in-law, how could you make such a joke just because you're angry with my brother? Xie Yang also looked at me with utter grief, as if I had deeply wounded him. He stepped forward to pull me. I am your husband. We are one as husband and wife. I know you misunderstood me because of the child. Please explain to His Majesty that this was just a moment of anger, alright? There was a hint of pleading in his tone. Suddenly, I was reminded of my past life. Before he fed Yuna to the wild dogs, I had begged him just as pitifully and humbly. Xie Yang, Yuna is your own flesh and blood. Please spare him, won't you? What was his answer back then? Oh, he said, flesh and blood, with such a vicious mother, he doesn't deserve to be my flesh and blood. At this moment, I laughed. Spouses, with such a malicious heart, you are unworthy of being my husband. A flicker of astonishment crossed Xie Yang's face. The Emperor, however, laughed. You little girl, you're still as willful and spoiled as you were in your childhood. It's good that you're not seriously hurt, so your father won't come to the palace every day to cry and complain to me. Seeing the Emperor and me so familiar, Bai Zhenjin and Xie Yang's expressions grew increasingly unpleasant. Watching the two people who were so high and mighty in my previous life now filled with resentment and fear, I only felt a great sense of satisfaction in my heart, even if there was truly nothing between Xie Yang and Bai Zhenjin. The Emperor's suspicious nature would never allow his consort to have such close contact with an outsider. Moreover, with me as a witness and the Empress having uncovered evidence, it was proven that the two of them were secretly harming the imperial heir. Just as the situation seemed to have reached a dead end, Bai Zhenjin suddenly burst into tears again. Your Majesty, please see the truth. My heart belongs entirely to you. It was Xie Yang who forced me to do these things with poison. Including that child, it was because of the drugs he used that things turned out like that. He harbors wicked ambitions, his heart deserves to be condemned. Bai Zhenjin shifted all the blame onto Xie Yang. Xie Yang was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the person he held dearest in his heart, his expression deeply conflicted. It was as if he were meeting her for the very first time. After a long silence, he ultimately didn't want to die too miserably and began to spill all the things Bai Zhenjin had instructed him to do over the years, both openly and covertly. Bai Zhenjin looked horrified. In her eyes, Xie Yang was nothing but her dog, but how could this dog suddenly turn around and bite her? Both of them were so enraged that they actually started brawling right in front of the Emperor and me. He called her vicious, and she cursed him as vile. In the end, the Emperor couldn't stand it any longer and ordered his guards to drag them off to the dungeon. Even as they were being hauled away, both of them were still crying out their innocence. The crimes they committed are so heinous that not even exterminating their entire clan would be enough punishment. Fortunately, I had already divorced Xie Yang, and the Emperor, because I provided crucial evidence, did not hold it against me. He granted my request to oversee the execution in the prison. The dungeon was dark, damp, and filled with a strange odor. The two of them, accustomed to a life of luxury, simply couldn't adjust. When he saw me, Xie Yang was extremely agitated. I knew you still had feelings for me. I was truly deceived by that wicked woman. Let me out, and we can live a good life together. I truly adore you. I showed a hint of being moved, making him feel even more that he might be saved, but Bai Zhenjin, who was locked up with him, was not happy about it. Why should she be the only one to suffer for a crime they both committed? What fondness, Miss Gu. Even your first meeting was orchestrated by me and this despicable man. Don't fall for his tricks. Xie Yang's eyes turned crimson. What nonsense are you spouting? Yet Bai Zhenjin had reached a point of no return. Nonsense. Wasn't it you who eagerly fawned over me, telling me you wanted to marry me, help me find a powerful ally from a prominent family, and by the way, dispel the Emperor's suspicions. You didn't hesitate at all when you stabbed the boat back then, so why pretend to be devoted now? Seeing the disgust on my face, Xie Yang fell into despair. He knew that he could no longer rely on me to get out of here. In despair, he grew furious and tightly gripped Bai Junjun's neck. It's all your fault. If you hadn't seduced and deceived me, how could I have done those things? And now you have the nerve to mock me. The rage of a simp should not be underestimated. He probably recalled the times Bai Junjun had ordered him around, and his grip tightened even more. Bai Junjun struggled a few times before falling still. After calming down, Xie Yang was startled. Had he strangled Bai Junjun to death? He looked at his own hands in disbelief, but quickly snapped back to reality, widening his eyes as he stared at me. It's you. I gave a slight nod. Indeed, after all. You're not the only one in this world who knows how to use poison. Xie, this poison isn't harmful to the human body, but it does make one a bit more irritable. TSK, you're quite frightening when you lose your temper. Let Bai Junjun die at the hands of someone she never took seriously. It's a fitting retribution. Xie Yang's face turned extremely grim. Why must you treat me this way? The way he asked that, it's as if I were the heartless scoundrel, seeing the pain in his eyes. I only found it strange, but it was just strange, nothing more. He might have had some feelings for me, but definitely not much. After all, if you truly love someone, how could you bear to let them get hurt? He was merely unwilling to accept it. Do you know why I treat you this way? You killed my Yuna. He stubbornly refused to admit it. Your Yuna died from a difficult childbirth. What about Shu Qin? Xie Yang's voice grew much softer. Shu Qin was just a maid. He truly held no regard for human life. I took a deep breath, feeling that he had grown even more repulsive in appearance. But you still owe me 2 lives, from our previous lifetime. As soon as these words were spoken, Xie Yang's eyes widened. In an instant, he understood everything. Why I didn't stop him during the production, why I insisted on proposing a separation, why I always looked at him as if he were an enemy. He collapsed to the ground in despair. But he didn't sit for long. Before he could say something regrettable that would disgust me, I had someone end his life directly. Better to set off directly than to let a long night bring many dreams. 2 more bodies were added to the imperial prison, and 1 more carefree person appeared outside its walls. I returned from the darkness back into the light, feeling the warmth of the sun on my body. That night, I had a dream. I dreamed of a child, fair and delicate as if carved from jade, waving at me. Mother, I'm leaving now. You must take care of yourself and don't let those rotten men deceive you again. I know, this is my Yuna. I nodded at him, smiling through tears. Don't worry, I won't be fooled by anyone again.